Here's everything we know about Thomas Matthew Crooks, the 20-year-old who took 8 shots at President Trump from this rooftop in Butler, Pennsylvania in July of 2024, during the lead-up to the 2024 presidential election.
Take a look at what happened.
And his political views started changing from radical right in 2019 to radical left in 2020. And here's a clip of Crooks after he had flipped to radical left.
Slash his throat! Every fucking Republican! Suck my fucking balls!
Say that one more time.
Slash Republican throats! Slash fascist throats! Death to fashion!
This video will also get into whether Thomas Matthew Crooks was a product of something like the CIA's MK-Ultra mind control program, similar to the Unabomber, who was a product of the CIA's MK-Ultra mind control program, as was Charles Manson and Lee Harvey Oswald. In other words, was Thomas Matthew Crooks a mind-controlled or mind-influenced weapon created by the CIA along the lines of what was portrayed in the classic 1962 movie, The Manchurian Candidate?
Captain Marco, will you be good enough to lend Raymond your pistol, please? Shoot Bobby, Raymond.
And we're going to get into all of that here. And here's Crooks on the day of the rally, scoping out the venue before he climbed up on this roof to take his shots. By the way, the photo that the media is using is obviously of Crooks when he was much younger. This is what Crooks actually looked like on the day of the rally, on the day that he tried to kill President Trump. And this rooftop that he shot from is 130 yards away. It's an easy shot for somebody using a scoped AR-15 style rifle. And one bullet struck Trump's ear. And the only reason that the bullet did not strike President Trump in the head, killing President Trump, is that just at the exact right instant, President Trump turned his head to the right to look at a chart that was being displayed on a big screen. A chart on all the illegal immigration that had occurred under the Biden regime. Sadly, one attendee at the rally was struck by a bullet and killed, a firefighter by the name of Corey Compatore. He was trying to shield his daughter and family from the incoming gunfire. And 2 others were wounded, one critically. Now, Crooks' profile is actually very similar to that of Tyler Robinson, the killer of Charlie Kirk. Both came from Trump-supporting families and both changed their political views radically. In fact, Thomas Crooks was radical right in 2019. He was a strong Trump supporter. But then in early 2020, just as COVID was hitting, he did a 180-degree flip and became far left. And Tyler Robinson, you remember, the killer of Charlie Kirk, became romantically involved with a fellow by the name of Lance Twiggs, who was in the process of transitioning from male to female. And Robinson moved in with Twiggs. Both were involved in a fetish community known as Furries. And Thomas Crooks in 2019 started an account on a social media website called Deviant Art. And in his bio on that site, he used the pronouns they and them. And that suggests he considered himself binary or gender fluid. He considered himself neither male nor female. And Crooks also considered himself a furry, part of this furry fetish community. And what is a furry? Well, furries are often trans or LGBTQ people who are sexually attracted to anime-style cartoon animals that often have hypersexualized human characteristics. And this genre of art can be very pornographic. I'm showing milder versions of it here.
The problem is that your kids do see it, and they do have access to it. You could go to open forums on Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and you can see these characters having sex. Graphic sex is uploaded to Pornhub, to the porn channels. It is something that, you take a woodland furry creature, which seems very innocent and cute, and you entice kids to this fantasy world, and the next thing you know, you're looking at graphic sex. Peeling back the layers and looking at these people and where they are in the gaming community and talking to these kids on Discord and getting into chat rooms, and then you go back and you look at some of the conversations that they have on other platforms and the things that they describe. They describe hypnotizing minors, that they describe having minors, minors, and that might be part of their fantasy, but what happens when they break out of that fantasy and they next level it up, and they can no longer be sexually gratified by talking about it or drawing pictures or creating images in AI, and they act out with that minor.
In fact, the CSI crime show had an episode titled Fur and Loathing that was about a killer who had a furry fetish. Now, I had never heard of this term until the assassination of Charlie Kirk, when I learned that the killer of Charlie, Tyler Robinson, and his transitioning lover, Lance Twiggs, were furries. Thomas Crooks also had what is called a muscle mommy fetish, which is an attraction to very large, hypersexualized, very muscular women. Here he reposts an image of a female bodybuilder who is towering over a much smaller male who looks like Crooks. The DeviantArt website is a hangout for trans people and other LGBTQers where they can anonymously discuss their offbeat sexual fantasies. And Thomas Crooks' username on this website was Epic Microwave. And Crooks was posting ultra-violent art on this DeviantArt website. For example, on June 10, 2023, he shared this art titled How He Lost His Eye. And the background colors on this art are trans pride colors. And here's another lovely piece of artwork that Crooks shared from June of 2023 that shows a purple-headed figure with his head cracked open after being bashed over the head by a metal pipe. So basically what we have here is another gender-fluid psychopath. Thomas Matthew Crooks is born on September 20th, 2003. He grew up in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, which is just south of Pittsburgh. Growing up, Crooks loved Legos, building model airplanes, playing video games, loved his cat, also was a big fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and just liked hanging out with his family. A pretty normal kid. Both of Crooks' parents worked licensed professional counselors. And Crooks attended Bethel Park High School. He was an excellent student. He was admitted to the National Technical Honor Society in 2021 when he was a junior in high school. In 2022, he graduated with high honors and won a $500 STAR Award from the National Math and Science Initiative. Crooks also earned a score of 1530 out of a possible 1600 on the SAT, which puts him in the top 1% of SAT test takers. Plus, he got perfect scores on 3 advanced placement exams. So he was very smart, but he was also bullied a lot, according to some of his classmates.
He was bullied almost every day.
In what way? Can you explain?
He would sit alone at lunch. He was just an outcast, and you know how kids are nowadays, so they're gonna see someone like that and they're gonna target him because they think it's funny or whatever. So it's the best way I can describe it. And it's honestly kind of sad. I don't want to say this is what provoked it, but you never know.
Yeah. You said he was a loner?
Yeah. I want to say he was a loner more because he was quiet, but he was just bullied. He was bullied so much.
This is high school?
Yeah.
What did do you remember at all what they said to him or called him?
No. He was just made fun of, I guess, for the way he dressed or his appearance.
And here's some footage of Crooks in his high school class.
Stop. Guys, my leggings.
Not sure this qualifies as bullying. One of the students is tugging on his trousers here. Looks like they're making fun of him for having long pants that are too short for him. Looks like he's grown out of his trousers. But he seems to be taking it good-naturedly. This doesn't look like real bullying. It just looks like typical horsing around that we see in high school. And here's some footage of Crooks in the 10th grade.
6'4". I go to Stanford University. I have a 10-inch penis.
TMZ obtained this footage from an unnamed classmate of Crooks, who describes himself as having been a friend of Crooks. And Crooks is clearly joking around here. He describes himself as 6'4", going to Stanford University, and having a 10-inch penis.
6'4". I go to Stanford University. I have a 10-inch penis.
This unnamed friend of Crooks says they were making funny videos at the time. So Crooks did have friends. At least this person describes himself as a friend of Thomas Crooks. And this classmate, this friend of Crooks, describes Crooks as an exceptional student. Said he was a computer whiz. Said he could disassemble a computer and reassemble it with ease. And this classmate, this friend, said that Crooks was one of the most talented students in the class. Also said he liked to play video games, especially Fortnite and Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege game. And this classmate said that Crooks was quiet, but that he would open up once he got to know you. He describes Crooks as friendly and says that he got along with his classmates. So it sounds like Crooks was bullied by some students and friends with other students. And here's Thomas Crooks at graduation receiving his high school diploma.
Thomas Crooks.
Madison Rapali.
He looks very happy here. He's smiling. Thomas Crooks attended community college, the Community College of Allegheny County in Pittsburgh, where he earned an associate's degree in engineering and science. And he graduated, completed his 2-year associate's degree just 2 months before he tried to kill President Trump. And at the time he tried to kill President Trump, he was accepted for admission at both the University of Pittsburgh and Robert Morris University. And according to one of his professors at the community college, an engineering professor by the name of Patricia Thompson, Crooks was a standout student. Professor Patricia Thompson says, quote, "I thought he was a standout student," end quote. And Professor Thompson says that she was very impressed with a chessboard that Crooks designed and engineered for players with visual impairments. But he was also very quiet. Many of his classmates, students who were in classes with him, had no recollection of Thomas Crooks being in their classes. And at least in one class where he was expected to make a presentation to the class, he asked the professor if he could be excused from that requirement. He didn't want to make the presentation in front of the class. And about a year before he tried to kill President Trump, he joined the shooting club and practiced often at the shooting range. And he was employed at a nursing home at the time of the assassination attempt. Thomas Crooks' father noticed a decline in Thomas Crooks' mental health starting about a year before the shooting. The father told investigators that his son started dancing in his bedroom at night, also started talking a lot to himself. As mentioned, Crooks started his account on the Deviant Art website in 2019, where he used the they/them pronouns in his bio and became part of this furry fetish community. And his political views started changing from radical right in 2019 to radical left in 2020. And here's a clip of Crooks after he had flipped to radical left.
Slash his throat! Every fucking Republican! Suck my fucking balls!
Say that one more time.
Slash Republican throats! Slash fascist throats! Death to fashion!
Have a good one.
So he says, quote, "Slash his throat, every effing Republican, suck my effing balls," end quote. But hold on a second. In his July 24th testimony before Congress, 11 days after the assassination attempt, the FBI director under Joe Biden, Christopher Wray, told Congress under oath that the FBI could not find much online about Thomas Matthew Crooks.
In terms of what we've been able to find so far, a lot of the usual repositories of information have not yielded anything notable in terms of motive or like ideology. I think it's fair to say that we do not yet have a clear picture of his motive.
He told us that Crooks is basically an online ghost and that no motive for the assassination attempt could be deduced.
Matthew Crooks had 17 online accounts on sites like YouTube and Snapchat and Discord.
Then 1 week later, on July 30th, we were told by the deputy director of the FBI, Paul Abbate, that Thomas Crooks appeared to be a radical right-winger. He portrayed Crooks as an anti-Semite with anti-immigration views who talked about committing acts of violence against those he disagreed with politically.
While the investigation has not determined motive, the investigative team continues to review information from legal returns, including online and social media accounts. Something just very recently uncovered that I want to share is a social media account which is believed to be associated with the shooter in about the 2019-2020 timeframe. There were over 700 comments posted from this account. Some of these comments, if ultimately attributable to the shooter, appear to reflect anti-Semitic and anti-immigration themes, to espouse political violence, and are described as extreme in nature. While the investigative team is still working to verify this account to determine if it did in fact belong to the shooter, we believe it important to share and note it today, particularly given the general absence of other information to date from social media and other sources of information that reflect on the shooter's potential motive and mindset.
So no mention here by the deputy FBI director more than 2 weeks after the assassination attempt about Thomas Crooks's radical left-wing rhetoric online, or the fact that he was actually very active online. Now, it is true that Crooks was radical right in 2019 up until the COVID era, but in early 2020, Thomas Matthew Crooks's political views changed in the exact opposite direction, to radical left. By this point, more than 2 weeks after the assassination attempt, surely the FBI had all of Thomas Matthew Crooks's online history, but they chose to lie to Congress under oath, lie by omission, chose to leave out the part that Thomas Crooks had shifted to radical left in early 2020. So the question is why? Why did the FBI deceive the public? So as a result of this deceptive testimony by the FBI director and the deputy FBI director, the narrative was that Thomas Matthew Crooks was a Republican, that he was a right-winger.
Records show he is a registered Republican, and neighbors today told us that they've actually seen Trump signs outside of the home over the course of the last few years.
And yes, he was a right-winger up until 2020. Similar to Tyler Robinson, he was raised in a conservative home, a pro-Trump home. But he flipped to radical left in 2020, and obviously the FBI knew this, but chose not to share this information with Congress, even though under oath. So here was the political progression of Thomas Matthew Crooks. Crooks' social media accounts were quickly disabled and scrubbed after the assassination attempt. But fortunately, online sleuths have been able to retrieve some of Thomas Crooks' posts from internet archives. So here's an example of what Thomas Crooks was posting before COVID hit. Crooks posted this on July 20th, 2019. He writes, quote, "If you're saying Trump is a bad president, you aren't a patriot, as Trump is the literal definition of patriotism." Also in July of 2019, he writes about Democrat Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. He writes, quote, "Ilhan Omar and others are invaders and should honestly be killed and their dead bodies sent back," end quote. And this is still in his radical right phase. He posts this in July of 2019. He writes, quote, "I hope for a quick and painful death to all the deplorable immigrants and anti-Trump congresswomen who don't deserve anything this country has given them," end quote. And here's another Crooks post in 2019. He writes, quote, "Every one of the Trump-hating Democrats deserve to have their heads chopped off and put on stakes for the world to see what happens when you F with America," end quote. So that was Crooks in 2019 using very violent rhetoric during his radical right phase. But the FBI was only telling us half the story when the FBI director and deputy director told us that Crooks was radical right. Didn't tell us that his political views did a 180-degree flip to radical left in 2020. In February of 2020, he writes this, quote, "The deep state is simply made up of anybody who disagrees with the right wing. Conversation over," end quote. So he's not yet using violent rhetoric with his left-wing posts in early 2020. He's sounding more like a commentator on MSNBC. Also in February of 2020, Crooks writes, "You really believe that shit? How can you people call others sheep, but you are too brainwashed to realize how dumb you are? I mean, literally, you guys sound like a cult at times. So again, sounding a lot like an MSNBC commentator. And on February 26, 2020, Crooks writes this, quote, "No, I'm pretty sure people are just racist, and Trump is one of them. There does not need to be a deep state for that." So Crooks is now calling Trump and his supporters racist starting in early 2020. And I can go on with posts like this from Thomas Matthew Crooks. And Tucker Carlson dug this up. Around this time, Crooks started communicating with somebody named Willie Tepes. And who is Willie Tepes? Well, we don't know. But Willie Tepes appears to be a Scandinavian named Bjorn Leif Hjelmerud. The name Willie Tepes appears on a foreign Antifa website, which is linked to something called the Norwegian Resistance Movement, which has been designated a terrorist organization by the U.S. State Department. And this Norwegian resistance movement is aligned with Antifa and radical left, also violent. And according to Tucker Carlson's report, days after Crooks tried to kill Donald Trump, someone captured a screenshot of Tepes' YouTube page before the account was deleted. And here's a post from Tepes. Quote, "If a gun and badge is all that's needed, then authority obviously comes from the barrel of a gun. We have more guns than they do. There is no way we can avoid war at this point. You better get used to the idea." And then Crooks writes back, quote, "IMO, in my opinion, the only way to fight the government is with terrorism-style attacks. Sneak a bomb into an essential building and set it off before anyone sees you. Track down any important people, politicians, military leaders, etc., and try to assassinate them. Any sort of head-to-head fight is suicide, and even ambush surprise attacks likely aren't going to end well." End quote. That was Thomas Crooks responding to Tepes. So Crooks is sounding very unhinged at this point. Also, how did YouTube miss this ultra-violent rhetoric? YouTube is very aggressive about deleting accounts that incite violence. But YouTube did nothing about Thomas Matthew Crooks. YouTube did not delete Crooks' account until the day after the assassination attempt. And here we have YouTube's notice saying that Crooks' account has been deleted for violating community guidelines the day after the assassination attempt. But Crooks had been posting violent rhetoric about Republicans and Trump for years before this, but YouTube did nothing until the day after the assassination attempt. And here's more from Tepes. Quote, "We have nothing to lose and everything to win. And the alternative, a global police state, is unacceptable. Nothing in life is simple, but that is no argument against doing it." In other words, Tepes is pushing Crooks to take up arms against the Trump government. Tepes apparently is part of international Antifa, part of this Norwegian resistance movement. At this point, Thomas Crooks' comments on YouTube either stop or can't be retrieved. And I suspect he had a lot of other comments, a lot more activity on YouTube and other social media platforms, but his accounts and comments have been scrubbed. We just have about 700 of his YouTube comments to look at. But what the director of the FBI told us, Christopher Wray, what he told us was obviously false. Thomas Crooks was not an online ghost. He had a big internet presence. He was commenting all the time. And on January 20th, 2021, Crooks donated $15 to the Progressive Turnout Project, which is a leftist voter turnout organization. And he contributed to the Democrat Party's fundraising platform called Act Blue. He was responding to an email fundraising solicitation. And Crooks was 17 years old at that point. And then we have this video of Crooks, which I played earlier.
Slash his throat! Every fucking Republican! Suck my fucking balls!
Say that one more time.
Slash Republican throats! Slash fascist throats! Death to fashion!
Have a good one.
So this shows his mindset. He also became a furry and gender fluid in 2019, similar to Charlie Kirk's killer Tyler Robinson and Tyler Robinson's romantic transgendering partner, Lance Twiggs. We're learning this from a report by the New York Post's Miranda Devine, a report by Tucker Carlson, and online sleuths who are looking into this. We're not learning any of this from the FBI. Instead, we're told by the FBI that Thomas Matthew Crooks had no online presence, or very little online presence, and that he was almost a ghost. And this is the line that continues to be promoted even by the current FBI director, Kash Patel. But the opposite is true. Thomas Crooks had an extensive online presence. In addition to his YouTube account, he had a Discord account and a Snapchat account, and he was active. We just don't have access to his posts. Cook's social media accounts and posts have been scrubbed. We just have the 700 or so comments that he made on YouTube that have been retrieved through internet archiving tools. I'm sure the FBI has all of his internet activity, but they're hiding it from us. So we were told relentlessly by the media that Thomas Crooks was a Republican, which made absolutely no sense. Why would a Republican try to assassinate the Republican nominee for president? Makes no sense. That's what we were told initially by the FBI, and then that was repeated by the media relentlessly. Also, the far-left propaganda organization called the Anti-Defamation League, in its fraudulent report on political violence, continues to list Thomas Matthew Crooks as an example of right-wing political violence. But the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, does not count the BLM riots of 2020 that killed more than 30 people and caused billions of dollars in property damage as an example of left-wing violence. That's not counted by the ADL as left-wing violence. So Thomas Matthew Crooks is an example of right-wing political violence according to the ADL and the propaganda news. And of course, the propaganda news just flat out lies to your face every day. Also, very oddly and suspiciously, in my opinion, Thomas Crooks' body was cremated a few days after the assassination. That certainly doesn't sound like standard operating procedure in a case like this. Let's see. The body of the man who fired 8 shots at the President of the United States, killing 1 person, wounding 2 others. And his body was not preserved as evidence? It was cremated a few days after the assassination attempt? Were blood samples kept? Were spinal fluid samples kept? Brain matter? We don't know. And this to me sounds a lot like the cover-up involving the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. His brain was removed during the autopsy so that nobody could independently inspect the bullet wounds. President John F. Kennedy was then buried without his brain. Nobody knows what happened to John F. Kennedy's brain. So this sounds a little bit like that. Also, we've received no report from the medical examiner on what medications or other chemicals Crooks might have been on. We have a partial report that states he had no alcohol or that he was currently using illegal narcotics. That's all we have. But that's not a complete report. We have no complete report from the medical examiner. I expect to be lied to by the Biden FBI. My question is, why aren't we getting information from the Trump FBI? We're getting 0 from the Trump FBI, and Trump has been president now for a year. In fact, President Trump's FBI Director Kash Patel says that Crooks acted alone and is providing no new information about Crooks, and says that this case is effectively closed.
Under Director Wray, were there missed opportunities to stop Thomas Crooks?
You know, that's a question you'll have to ask him. We weren't there when it happened. We weren't responsible for the investigation.
You mentioned earlier that you've been briefing President Trump. Is President Trump satisfied by the findings?
Yes.
No more questions?
No.
Is the Thomas Crooks case a closed case?
How we treat cases like this of such great public importance is we put them in a pending/inactive status. So if there's new information that comes in, we can receive it and react to it, and we don't want to foreclose that possibility.
Huh. It's closed. What's going on here? Let's hear what Congressman Tim Burchett has to say about this.
K-Ultra.
I'm
They
going to
got
toss to you.
sued.
That's right.
They said it didn't exist, and then they got sued, and they said, oh, it exists, but we don't use it anymore. So I don't believe them as far as I can throw the dome off the dadgum Capitol, Benny. You got a kid who's got access to guns or has some simple knowledge of a firearm. He was programmed. You're exactly right. They programmed this kid, and Christy Nome and Kash and Bongino and the rest are reporting the facts as they know them. The facts have been buried or burned, or whoever knew is either sitting on a beach somewhere or they're dead. I would suggest they're probably dead. And this is what happens. You claim it doesn't. They label me and you conspiracy theorists, but this is exactly what we see happen. And it happens in Washington. It's happening now. It's too deep. It is. And that's why I said, I wish they could go in and just fire everybody and then just start back. But you can't do that because of security. You're going to fire some good people that are clearly have their thumb in the dike on terrorists or what have you. And that's where we're at. That's why Kash Patel and Bongino are having such a hard time. But when the CIA says this thing, we don't have this thing, and then they're brought in, their asses are brought into a court of law, and they say, well, we have it, but we don't use it anymore. Apparently somebody's using it. They know to contact these people. They watch the crime scene. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, brother. If there's a murder out here, our sheriff's department's got that thing blocked off. They got a tarp over it, and they've got it, cleared. Nobody can get up on it. Nobody can contaminate the crime scene. This is Knox County Sheriff's Department and the city of Knoxville Police. And I guarantee you, my Blount County Sheriff's Department, Sheriff Wrong, all those people always close off the crime scene. This is casebook. And also one other thing, I sponsored some legislation dealing with cremation, so I know a little bit about when they bring a body in. There are probably laws in that state that they violated because they cremated that kid, I think, pretty quick, if I'm not correct. If you might,
11 days, yes.
Okay. And if there was an investigation going on, there's probably something in the law that says you cannot dispose of the body. And I think you're right. I think all of it was washed, it was planned, and we just got lucky. I'm very close. I'm related to a Marine sniper. And I called him after that. I said, what do you think? He said, Tim, I could have made that shot with iron sights, without a scope, with all that stuff. We just got damn lucky.
You are alleging that Thomas Crooks was groomed by some type of dark intel program, MK Ultra or otherwise, in order to commit on that day the act of an assassination.
I think so. I've said that all along. I've said that. Look at the history. Look at where we're at in this country. Look at the deep state, the sewer as it is. This is what happens, dude, when 12% of the population goes to the polls. We're so vulnerable.
So Congressman Burchett believes that Thomas Crooks might have been groomed or programmed by some kind of dark intel program along the lines of the CIA's notorious MK Ultra mind control experiments. And Crooks perfectly fits the profile of somebody that the CIA would want for this program. We do know that MK Ultra, the MK Ultra mind control program, was a secret CIA program that was launched in the 1950s to create human weapons similar to what we saw in the classic 1962 movie, The Manchurian Candidate. The MK Ultra mind control program was supposedly disbanded when it was uncovered in the early 1970s, but most people think it still exists in some form, most likely in a much more advanced form. And my video on how the CIA created Charles Manson pretty well proves that Charles Manson and his closest followers were products of MK Ultra. Ted Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber, underwent 3 years of CIA MK Ultra mind control experiments when he was a student at Harvard. I have a video on that here. Lee Harvey Oswald also seems to have been subjected to CIA MK Ultra mind control. But in Oswald's case, his role was to be the fall guy, the patsy for the JFK assassination. He did not actually kill JFK. The assassination of JFK was carried out by others. Here's my video series on that. And whether or not Thomas Crooks and Tyler Robinson were products of the CIA's MK Ultra mind control program, I don't know. But Kash, Patel, and the FBI certainly are not being forthcoming with information. Do I think that the 2 assassination attempts against President Trump in 2024 during the lead up to the presidential election were CIA deep state operations? I certainly think it's possible. I think what happened was this. The Biden regime was in charge of then candidate Trump's Secret Service protection. And I believe that the Biden regime purposefully provided Trump with very lax security, almost no security, believing that out of 340 million Americans, there would be a wacko or 2 or 3 who would try to take out President Trump. A big part of the Democrat strategy, along with the propaganda media, was to constantly repeat the message that Trump is the next Hitler, that if we elect Trump, this is the equivalent of electing Adolf Hitler, or even worse than Hitler. That's what we were told over and over and over again.
What would a second Donald Trump term look like?
He will unravel the institutions of our democracy.
Draw similarities between Mussolini and Hitler.
Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini.
Makes Donald Trump even more dangerous.
And shoot visitors to the White House.
Yeah.
That means he can shoot the first lady.
Make it illegal to run against him, to throw his opponents in jail, to shut down the media.
Using martial law against the American people.
Terminate the Constitution, create mass internment camps.
Throw everyone into Gitmo.
You might have any number of things happen to you and your family.
Every one of us, our freedom, our liberty, none of us is safe.
He's going to have people around him executing against an enemy's list.
Assassinate generals.
Ordering troops to attack American citizens.
Trump's very well-armed and extremist base will try to kill people.
It's the end of democracy.
I think that could be the end of our democracy.
But democracy is dead if Trump is reelected.
Arrest political opponents.
Going to make the law. Everyone else will have to follow.
A vote for Donald Trump may mean the last election that you ever get to vote in.
He would never leave office?
There's no question.
Trump is reelected, he won't leave.
Donald Trump will never leave office voluntarily.
And what that means is that everybody who wants us to remain a republic has to put every other thing aside.
Well, he cannot be the next president.
President of the United States is racist.
All the people who voted for Donald Trump are racist.
Yes. He is a racist pig.
Reclaiming our heritage, that sounds a lot like a certain leader that killed members of my family and about 6 million other Jews in the 1940s.
Trump is as destructive a person in this century as Hitler, Stalin, and Mao were in the last century.
It is just unquestionable at this point that that man cannot see public office again. He is not only unfit, he is destructive to our democracy, and he has to be eliminated.
And this montage could go on for hours or even days. This is what we've been hearing from the propaganda media and the Democrat Party for more than a decade now about Donald Trump. That electing Donald Trump would be like electing Hitler. And the obvious goal of this rhetoric is to trigger assassination attempts. Because if you really think that America is about to elect Hitler, then the logical step is to do whatever is necessary to make sure that that does not happen. I mean, if I happened to be standing next to Hitler before the start of World War II, and if I somehow had foreknowledge of what was about to happen, I would certainly take out Hitler if I had the opportunity to prevent World War II, to save 40 million lives, and to prevent the Holocaust. So relentlessly calling Trump Hitler, or even worse than Hitler, is a call out to every unhinged wacko out there to do your patriotic duty, to do whatever you can do to stop the election of the next Hitler. And of course, Democrats tried to stop him with 2 impeachments with relentless lawfare, convicted him of 32 fake crimes based on made-up law in a kangaroo Manhattan court. They managed to turn a $130,000 hush money payment to a porn actress into 32 felonies, and the American people saw through all that. So the last resort for Democrats was to incite these assassination attempts. And then phase 2 is just to provide President Trump with almost no security, with fake security. It's actually worse than no security because President Trump assumed he had security. He didn't know he had almost no security. He was given fake Secret Service protection. In fact, let's take a look at just how bad the security was for candidate Trump during the lead up to the 2024 election.
They are images that won't soon be forgotten. Suspected killer, 20-year-old Thomas Crooks, on the roof of a building, taking aim.
When I seen him holding the gun like he was taking aim, I thought, oh my God, this guy's about to shoot into the crowd or something. So I turned my phone on.
Mike DeFriship said he started recording on his cell phone. The still photo grabbed from that video.
Yeah, we had just got there a little bit late.
He and his wife Amber live in Crawford County, Pennsylvania. They were at the Trump rally in Butler Saturday. They arrived late, so they sat outside of the secured area near the building where Crooks waited.
We were there maybe 10 minutes waiting for Mr. Trump to come on. And then after he came on and started to speak, my wife shortly after he started nudged me and said, hey, what's going on behind us? And that's when we noticed some commotion.
Now, where's that? Oh my God. The Friship said he noticed Crooks climbing the roof, then noticed he had a gun. They tried alerting police, then took cover.
I kind of felt I could see the guy with my eyes. I knew where he was at. I got me and my wife behind a big tree, and I felt that we were safe.
Then you see the gun, you're like, oh my God, we have to hide.
If you want to really see something, this chaos after gunfire. bullet grazed the former president's ear, Mr. Trump narrowly escaping a more serious, possibly even fatal blow. But one man in the crowd is killed, 2 others wounded. Secret Service snipers take down Crooks, killing him.
It was devastating to us. I mean, to know that we watched a guy shoot somebody, and also even the shooter. I mean, we watched him get shot right in front of us. I mean, we seen it. We seen the aftermath.
The couple believing something more could have been done to prevent the tragic shooting, talking now about who, besides the shooter, should be held accountable.
People are trying to say the local cops and this and that might not have done their job. And in my opinion, and I haven't put this out anywhere else besides now that it's been a couple days, we're processing some of this. You know, it's Secret Service's job to keep terror of the president.
Thomas Crooks had visited the site of the shooting twice, had used a drone to conduct surveillance of the site, had placed a ladder behind that building so he could climb up on the roof, placed a ladder there in advance of the event. And hours before the rally even started, Crooks was spotted by the Secret Service and by law enforcement walking around the grounds with a rangefinder and carrying a big bag full of stuff. Law enforcement thought he was suspicious, deemed him a person of interest. But the Secret Service somehow lost track of Crooks and didn't notice that he had returned to the site, didn't notice him at the rally, didn't notice him climbing up on that roof in plain view. And the woman appointed by President Biden to run the Secret Service during his regime is named Kimberly Cheadle. And let's take a look at this political hack in front of Congress answering questions.
How did a 20-year-old loner with a week's notice pick the absolute best location to assassinate President Trump when the entire Secret Service missed it? Director Cheadle, in your leadership, your agency got outsmarted and outmaneuvered by a 20-year-old. How can we have any confidence that you could stop a trained professionals from a nefarious nation state?
Those are absolutely questions that we need to have.
I know they're questions, but the fact of the matter is we can't have that confidence. Director, do you have the ability personally, and do you have the authority to beef up security of any of your protectees?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So were you also aware there was a credible threat President Trump was facing? He was facing a heightened security threat to a foreign adversary?
Yes.
Okay.
So Biden and his regime provided Trump inferior security, really no security, even while knowing that Iran had deployed assassination teams to kill Donald Trump, because Iran obviously did not want Trump to be elected to a second term as president.
Okay, there wasn't a CAT team, a full CAT team on site. There wasn't counter-surveillance teams on site. But this is the thing. You just said you had the ability to beef up the security. You knew about the threat, and you didn't. And that's as telling as it is chilling. We have satellite images from the Butler Fairgrounds. Have you visited the site?
No, I have not.
9 days and you have not visited the site. You should have been there that night. Did you talk to, that evening, did you talk to the team, the heroes that surrounded the president? Did you call them that night?
They were still operational work.
So that's an answer is no. Did you call them the next day?
President. Yes, I spoke with them.
You called them the very next day, not the day of, or was it 72 hours after?
I don't know the timeline, but I spoke with them.
Okay, because you're under oath.
Immediately following.
I think it was 72 hours after. You waited 3 days. What is immediately clear is that there are a number of structures that need to be secured. Of these, Director, other than the first, immediate 4, what's the most dangerous site that should have been secured? Because Security 101, you got to mitigate the high ground.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the next most dangerous site, what was the closest structure to the president, other than the 4 immediate ones that you had your counter sniper teams on?
There are a number of structures around that event site.
You know who the shooter knew? The shooter has visited the site 2 more times than you have, and he had a drone, and he picked the AGR building. So you said, do you remember in an ABC interview you did that you didn't have people on the roof of the AGR building because you were worried about safety because of the slope?
I recall that statement.
Okay.
Yeah, so her excuse was that she didn't have any Secret Service on that roof because the roof was sloped, so made it dangerous for the agents, which is just absurd. The roof had almost no slope, but they didn't even have any Secret Service watching the roof. That was just 130 yards away from the podium where President Trump was speaking.
Does the Secret Service have written policy you can share with us about slope roofs?
No.
So here's this thing with the slopes. You go all up to like 1812, you can go to a 112, which is about as flat as you can get without it being completely flat. And you're saying that there was a danger, safety concern there. But the problem is, Director, you put your counter snipers on a 312 roof, which is steeper than the 112. And by the way, the 112 is ADA compliant. You can build a ramp for a wheelchair on a 112 roof. So these are nothing but pathetic excuses, and they make no sense, and they're a bunch of cow dung. All the law enforcement I've spoken with over the last 9 days are amazed that the AGR rooftop was not secure. I have never had any long gun training in my life. I own an AR-15, and last time I shot it one time my whole life. It was 6 years ago. That is until Saturday, where we recreated the events in Savoy, Texas. We recreated what happened in Butler. I was lying prone on a sloped roof at 130 yards at 6:30 at night. And I knew that he had a scope. I didn't know what kind, red dot or magnified. So I shot 8 rounds from both. You know what the result was? 15 out of 16 kill shots. And the one I missed would have hit the president's ear. That's a 94% success rate. And that shooter was a better shot than me. It is a miracle President Trump wasn't killed. Corey Comparator's life is over because that damn shooter made it on the roof. And it wasn't the roof that was dangerous. It was a nut job on top of the roof. You know what else is dangerous? I believe your horrifying ineptitude and your lack of skilled leadership is a disgrace. Your obfuscating today is shameful. And you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
She had to resign as the director of the Secret Service after this hearing. This was not ineptitude, in my opinion. I believe that Trump was provided almost zero security on purpose by the Biden regime. Let's hear what Senator Josh Hawley has to say about this.
Jesse, what I'm learning now is that the lead advance agent that day in Pennsylvania, this is the agent that was in charge of Trump's entire trip in Pennsylvania, that this agent actually failed one or more of her training exams when she first joined the Secret Service. I mean, the pattern that is emerging here, Jesse, from whistleblowers who've come forward to me now over and over again is that the Trump rally was undermanned, it was understaffed, they did not have people who had experience on it. I mean, this is absurd. And the fact that the director will not level with the American people about what's going on here is just totally unacceptable and unbelievable.
So this woman fails, and doesn't matter, Cheadle still makes her in charge of the protective site detail for Butler, knowing that there was an Iranian threat?
Yeah, see, this is what's so hard to understand, is that if this individual had failed one or more of her training exams, if she was known not to be really one of the Secret Service's top agent, she's in the Pittsburgh office, why was she put in charge of the entire trip, Jesse? I mean, the whole thing. She was in charge of the whole works from the time the president landed to the time he went to Butler. It's just totally inexplicable. And Jesse, one other thing. I'm told by people who are close to and have knowledge of the Secret Service's own internal investigation that the Department of Homeland Security is leaning on the Secret Service not to comply with document requests to Congress. I mean, this is really getting to be outrageous. The American people need the truth here.
Yeah, there's a cover-up going on. Now that's definitive.
And Thomas Crooks, on July 6, 2024, the same day he registered to attend the Trump rally in Butler, Crooks searched for how far was Oswald from Kennedy. Crooks had also used a number of aliases and encrypted communications accounts to buy firearm supplies and bomb-making material. Bomb-making materials were found in his vehicle and in his home. He was also carrying a remote detonator. But none of this activity was picked up by the FBI or the Secret Service. Also, on July 12, 2024, the day before the rally, Crooks went to a shooting range to practice his shooting. In fact, Crooks is recorded 45 times practicing his shooting at this range during the year leading up to the assassination attempt. And before going to the rally on July 13, 2024, Crooks purchased 50 rounds of ammunition and a ladder. He also, on that day, asked for the day off from work because he said he had, quote, something important to do, end quote. And hours before the shooting, Crooks' parents called the police to report him as missing and expressed concern about his well-being. But somehow, all this was missed. Then 9 weeks later, there was a second assassination attempt on Donald Trump on his golf course in Palm Beach. This convicted felon right here named Wesley Routh waited at Donald Trump's golf course for 12 hours, waited at this location all night, knowing that Trump would be coming by the next morning on his golf cart. Routh was another Democrat donor. He had a scoped AKS-style rifle, also had a GoPro video camcorder so that he could record the assassination and post it on social media. This location right here is where the press comes to get photos and video of Donald Trump playing golf. But this location, this most obvious point of vulnerability at Trump's golf club, was unsecured by Biden's Secret Service. And the Secret Service conducted no perimeter checks of the golf course prior to Donald Trump playing golf. And there was no drone or electronic surveillance of the perimeter of the golf course. So Routh was just able to camp here all night for 12 hours and wait for Trump. And Trump was coming right at Routh in his golf cart when an alert Secret Service agent, a rank-and-file Secret Service agent who was with Trump, just happened to spot Routh's rifle poking through the chain-link fence and out of the shrubbery. So this agent opened fire on Routh, and Routh fled. And here's all Routh's stuff here. Had that agent not spotted Routh's rifle poking through the chain-link fence and out of the shrubbery, which would be very difficult to see, especially if the sun were shining in the agent's eyes, and if he had not spotted that rifle, Donald Trump would be dead. Routh was arrested about 45 minutes later, heading north on I-95. And here he is being arrested with a Biden-Harris bumper sticker on his truck.
Walk straight back! Keep walking! What's your name, Austin? Ryan?
So once again, it appears to me that the Biden Secret Service provided completely inadequate security for Donald Trump. I believe on purpose. The Biden regime was trying to kill Donald Trump, in my opinion. I mean, wouldn't it just be Security 101 for the Secret Service to secure the perimeter of the golf course where Donald Trump was about to play? This is the former president of the United States we're talking about, and the likely future president of the United States. And just for comparison, here's what the security looks like for Barack Obama when he plays golf. And he wasn't running for president. Hasn't been president for a decade. So Obama, who wasn't even running for president, was given much better security than President Trump, who was running for a second term as president and was likely going to win. So the Biden Secret Service learned absolutely nothing from the first assassination attempt by Thomas Crooks, still provided Trump with almost no security. Well, come on, it's not that the Biden regime didn't learn. This fake security the Biden regime provided Trump was on purpose, by design, in my opinion. And here are some more odd things to know about Wesley Ryan Routh. For one thing, he had a long arrest record, had been convicted of multiple felonies, but had never spent any time in prison. For example, in 2002, he was arrested in Greensboro, North Carolina, for possessing a weapon of mass destruction, which was a fully automatic machine gun, along with an explosive device. He had barricaded himself in a building and was in an armed standoff with police for 3 hours.
A stack of criminal convictions tied to Ryan Routh's name, and retired Greensboro Police Sergeant Tracy Falk recalls him well.
I was like, oh my goodness, I remembered him just because of the dangerous person in the standoff and everything.
Falk, now teaching, FaceTimed me on her lunch break to walk me through exactly how Routh got 3 of the convictions on his record back in December of 2002.
I happened to see Ryan Routh drive past me, and I was like, hey, he doesn't have a driver's license.
Falk ran his plates, which turned up a dangerous person alert, so she pulled him over.
I saw him reach towards the center of his vehicle, so I shined the light in to figure out what he was doing, and he opened a duffel bag, and there was a gun in it.
That gun was a fully automatic machine gun. Falk says Routh then took off, barricading himself inside his roofing company, where he stayed for hours before police took him into custody.
I could see him walking back and forth inside his business.
Routh was convicted on 3 charges. Documents I obtained show Routh was convicted of possessing a weapon of mass destruction just months earlier in 2002. And this indictment shows that weapon was an explosive device.
And I think that's why we were getting the dangerous persons alerts.
How could he have never spent any time in prison for this? Also, similar to Thomas Matthew Crooks and Tyler Robinson, Wesley Ryan Routh had been pro-Trump at one point. He voted for Trump in 2016, but then he turned against Trump. And he turned against Trump during COVID. After COVID, he started posting long anti-Trump screeds on social media, calling Trump a threat to democracy. He also became a fanatic about the Ukraine war. In 2022, he even traveled to Ukraine to fight for Ukraine. He tried to recruit a mercenary army in Afghanistan to fight for Ukraine and tried to bring these mercenary fighters from Afghanistan by way of Iran to Ukraine.
You know, we need thousands and thousands and thousands of people here fighting with the Ukrainians. We need, you know, we've got 190 countries around the world, and we need thousands from all of them. If the governments will not send their official military, then we civilians have to pick up the torch and make this thing happen.
Ryan Routh was the suspect in an alleged assassination attempt on former President Trump. I immediately recognized the name because I had been in touch with Ryan Routh for over a year in the early stages of the war in Ukraine. Like thousands of other international volunteers, he apparently went to Ukraine to help. I spoke with him, I think, once on the phone and texted frequently, and he put me in touch with several foreign fighters. He mentioned plans to bring in thousands of Afghan and Syrian fighters.
Weirdly, by the way, super weirdly, both of Trump's would-be assassins, Thomas Matthew Crooks and Wesley Ryan Routh, appeared in ads by Blackrock, which is America's biggest asset manager, biggest money manager. BlackRock has $12.5 trillion under management, and both Thomas Crooks and Wesley Ryan Routh appeared in BlackRock ads. How weird is that? Wesley Ryan Routh appeared in a BlackRock commercial supporting Ukraine in May of 2022.
Is to appeal to world leaders, world organization, with a demand to provide a green corridor. World organization.
And Thomas Matthew Crooks was featured in a BlackRock ad in 2023, 1 year before he tried to kill President Trump.
I teach AP and honors economics in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I hope when I retire someday, they say that guy made this place a special place to come to school.
Why are both of Trump's would-be assassins appearing in ads by BlackRock, this $12 trillion money manager? Pretty odd, to say the least. And it's worth noting that many former top CIA officials work for BlackRock. BlackRock is a revolving door for the CIA and the military-industrial complex. And there's Crooks and Routh appearing in BlackRock commercials. Even the name BlackRock sounds like the CIA, pretty close to Black Box, as in CIA Black Box Operation, Black Box, BlackRock. And in 2023, Wesley Ryan Routh, wrote a self-published book titled The Unwinnable War, in which he calls on Iran to assassinate Trump. Specifically, he writes this, quote, "You are free to assassinate Trump," end quote. Also odd, Wesley Ryan Routh made the trip from Greensboro, North Carolina, to this spot at the Trump golf course for the purpose of killing Trump. How would Wesley Ryan Routh know exactly where to go unless he had been told? Perhaps by the CIA. And how would he be in Ukraine trying to recruit a mercenary army from Afghanistan through Iran without some kind of support, without connections? He had no visible means of financial support. He had no money. How did he get to Ukraine? Also apparently to Afghanistan and Iran on his own without help, and then end up in this location right here for the purpose of killing Trump. Both Thomas Matthew Crooks and Wesley Ryan Routh fit the profile of being products of something like the CIA's MK-Ultra mind control program. They're perfect candidates for MK-Ultra or something like it. Both Crooks and Routh were mentally broken people, were political fanatics, and so would certainly be susceptible to programming and suggestion by something like the CIA's MK-Ultra mind control program. Looks like a strong possibility to me. Getting back to Thomas Crooks, his use of the they-them pronouns, his furry fetish, his muscle mommy fetish, his gender confusion. I also think that the schools pushing LGBTQ and trans ideology on the children as young as kindergarten or even younger than kindergarten, teaching 5-year-olds that they should consider changing their gender, I think that's playing a role in warping the minds of young children.
I'm going to go over a lesson I do with my elementary students. This
this lesson is super easy to do, and it's something that you can just continue throughout the entire year when it comes to respecting other people's pronouns. So I went to amaze.org and we watched a video there on pronouns and how to respect each other's pronouns. We then created this anchor chart together describing pronouns. And all the language on the bottom as well as in the blue, the students came up with on their own.
Hello, my name is EJ. I teach elementary general music to students from kindergarten through 5th grade. And my students call me Maestro.
We actually don't need a CIA MK Ultra style mind control program to shatter the minds of children and then turn them into human weapons. Or maybe the public schools are part of the CIA's mind control program. These are, after all, the government's schools. Then we add to this the dark corners of social media that young people get sucked into. They spend hours alone in their room consuming porn and fetish worlds. Inside these fantasies, these young people get pulled into this world of perversions and become completely disconnected from reality. And this world of transgenderism appears especially sick, twisted, and violent. Earlier this year, we saw a trans shooter named Robin Westman, previously Robert Westman, shoot up a Catholic school in Minneapolis, killing two young children, an 8-year-old boy and a 10-year-old boy. He also wounded 18 others. He was armed with an AR-15 style automatic rifle, a 9mm semi-automatic pistol, and a 12-gauge shotgun, as well as a .38 caliber revolver. He was also wearing body armor. The only reason he wasn't able to kill many more people is that it was the policy of this church, which is connected to the school, to lock the doors once Mass begins. And on his gun and ammo magazines, he had written, "Kill Donald Trump" and "For the Children." Robin Westman also wrote that he or she wanted to kill as many Catholic children as possible. And I say he or she because he wrote in his journal that he regretted his transition, which he did when he was age 17. Westman wrote in his journal that he fantasized about, quote, being that scary, horrible monster standing over those powerless kids, end quote. In March of 2023, we had this trans killer named Audrey Hale, who gunned down children at a Christian school in Nashville. She killed 3 9-year-old children and 3 adults. She was gunned down by police. Audrey Hale had been planning this attack for months, had drawn detailed maps of the school. Then there's the Colorado Springs shooter, Anderson Lee Aldrich, who used they/them pronouns and went by Mix Aldrich. Also says he's non-binary. Mix Aldrich made pornographic films, and his father was a porn actor. On the night of November 19, 2022, he entered a gay nightclub called the Q Club, armed with an AR-15 style rifle, loaded with a 60-round drum magazine, also had a Glock 17 style handgun, and wore body armor. He killed 5 people and wounded 25 more. The media portrayed this as a right-wing anti-LGBTQ attack, but Aldrich had never voted before. He used the they/them pronouns, went by Mix Aldrich, and had been to this club at least 6 times in the past. He also went to other gay clubs, and he described himself as non-binary. His family had never seen him date a woman, and he endured homophobic bullying in high school. So this looks to me more like a conflict within the LGBT community. Maybe he was mistreated or felt rejected by patrons of this club. Who knows? Then there were the 2 Denver school shooters. One of them, Alec McKinney, was trans. Alec McKinney was born female with the name Maya. She transitioned to male at the age of 15. At the time of the shooting, she was 16 years old and in an intense relationship, apparently a romantic relationship, with her partner in crime, a male named Devon Erickson. Erickson was 2 years older. On May 17, 2019, they entered the STEM school in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver. They were armed with handguns and improvised explosive devices. 1 student was killed, 8 were wounded. Police arrived quickly and apprehended the shooters.
There's a shooting at Denver. STEM school, Highlands Ranch. There's bullet holes in the wall.
There's bullet holes in the wall? Okay, we're coming. We're coming as fast as we can, all right?
In September of 2018, a female-to-male trans person named Snowshia Mosley murdered 3 colleagues at a Rite Aid distribution center in Aberdeen, Maryland.
A woman opening fire and killing 3 people, then taking her own life.
He's fine. Andrew's fine.
This morning, police urgently trying to find out why this 26-year-old woman, Shosun Mosley, opened fire on her fellow employees at a Rite Aid distribution center.
So you had the shooter with us. Okay. Is the shooter a patient? Yes, for sure.
Sheriff's deputies, SWAT teams storming that center after Mosley pulled a 9mm handgun and started shooting just outside, then inside the warehouse, hitting 6 fellow employees, then turning the gun on herself.
On January 4th, 2024, a 17-year-old named Dylan Butler, a biological male, entered Perry High School in Perry, Iowa, and opened fire, killing one 6th grader and a school administrator, also wounded 4 other students.
Shots ringing out just after 7:30 a.m. on the first day back from winter break.
We're going to need multiple ambulances. Multiple victims down.
The suspect, 17-year-old student Dylan Butler, seen here, posted this TikTok from what looks like a school bathroom with a blue duffel bag next to him and the words, "Now we wait." Moments later, authorities say the suspect shot and killed a 6th grader who was at the school for a breakfast program, then shot 4 more students, and the principal, Dan Marburger, before taking his own life.
Screenshots from Dylan's now deleted social media accounts on TikTok, Discord, and Reddit showed he, they pronouns, rainbow and transgendered flag emojis, and a repost of a graffiti saying, "Love your trans kids." Also used the gender fluid hashtag and posted in rtrans on Reddit in 2021. And it appears that Dylan was considering transitioning to female, but worried about looking ugly. On December 16, 2024, Natalie Rupnow, then age 15, entered the Abundant Life Christian School, a private K-12 school in Madison, Wisconsin. She also went by the name Samantha. She was armed with 2 handguns. She opened fire, killing a student and a teacher, plus wounding 6 others, 1 critically.
We've now learned that the suspected shooter is 15-year-old Samantha Rupnow, who you see right here on the left-hand portion of your screen. A teacher and a student are now dead. 6 others were hurt. Police say she planned the attack in advance. Police are now combing through her family's home, already confirming they found a manifesto planning this crime.
15-year-old Natalie Samantha Rupnow was a very attractive young girl whose mind was poisoned by radical woke ideology. This variant being radical feminism. Here's an excerpt from her manifesto. Quote, "Women are the only hope for this wretched world, but even women have been brainwashed by the media for too long. They've internalized the patriarchy and turned on each other, always begging for male approval and validation. It's disgusting. I realize the truth that men are irredeemable. They can't be reformed or redeemed. They are an effing scourge of the earth. The only solution is to exterminate them and every Foid who worships these effing parasites. Every single male must be wiped out, from babies to the elderly. Only then can women be free to create a new world. I'll be a pioneer. I'll be the first to take the first step. I've been craving to kill them all." End quote. Natalie had also been using various pronouns and asked to be called Sam. And she was getting therapy for gender identity issues as well as a turbulent home life. Her father said that she was starting to socially transition. Her parents were divorced and remarried twice. Her father reportedly is or has been a heavy drinker. And her mom was found dead in her home on August 1st, 2025. Authorities say she eliminated herself, but no details were given. I can go on with trans and gender-confused young people committing horrific crimes. Gee, it's almost like being trans and binary is a mental illness. Who would have thought that a teenager who cuts off his or her body parts, mutilates their sex organs that God has given them, would be mentally ill? And the schools are telling the kids that this is normal, even encouraging it. And not surprisingly, the S-side rate, the eliminate themselves rate, is 10 times higher among trans people than among the general population. Who would have ever predicted that? And I think that young people in America are in trouble in general. I don't think we need the CIA MKUltra mind control program to create these human weapons, though that's probably also happening. And as I said, it's quite possible that the government-run schools are a CIA MKUltra style mind control program. The goal being to create a mind-controlled population that can't think critically. The schools are literally creating mental illness in our children. Then add to this that they're alone in their rooms, they get sucked into the darkest forms of porn and radical politics. Young people aren't dating anymore, not finding normal relationships, not forming families and having children. They're just alone in their rooms, staring at computer screens, getting sucked into porn, perversion, and radicalism. And in the darker corners of the internet, there's a movement called satanic accelerationism. These are people, mostly young people, who want to accelerate the collapse of capitalism and Western civilization. The Catholic school shooter in Minneapolis, Robin Westman, subscribed to satanic accelerationism, as did the Nashville Christian school shooter, Audrey Hale, and Natalie Samantha Rupnow. These were subscribers to satanic accelerationism. And the sad reality is that we have at least 2 generations of young people, or a large segment of young people, who have been lost to this dark world. Young men are no longer meeting young ladies, getting married, and having children. The fertility rate in America has now plummeted to an all-time low of 1.5 babies per female. This is nowhere near the population replacement rate. This means that America is literally disappearing without immigration. Legal immigration, of course. But it would be far better if Americans were just forming families and having children. Elon Musk says that this plunging birth rate is the single biggest threat to civilization's survival.
The birth rate is very low in almost every country. And it's something, unless that changes, civilization will disappear. America had the lowest birth rate, I believe, ever. That was last year. Places like Korea, the birth rate is 1/3 replacement rate. So that means in 3 generations, Korea will be 3 or 4% of its current size. And nothing seems to be turning that around. Humanity is dying.
29% of adult men in America say that they have never asked a woman out on a date. With an additional 27% of single males saying that they have not even approached a woman within the past year. And among 18 to 25-year-olds, 72% have not approached a woman in the past year. Meanwhile, 74% of females aged 25 and under say they want to be approached by a man, but it's not happening. This would be absolutely unheard of when I was young. Just 47% of households today are led by a married couple. I was born in 1958. In 1960, 74% of households were led by a married couple. In 1950, the number was 78%. 78% of households led by a married couple, in contrast to just 47% today. Add to this that married couples are having fewer babies. Just 1.8 babies on average per married couple today, compared to 4 babies per married couple in the 1950s. So it is an absolute crisis, and the social dysfunction is producing a lot of mental illness, and lost kids like Thomas Matthew Crooks, Audrey Hale, Robin Westman, Natalie Samantha Rupnow, and the list goes on and on. I guess I have 2 pieces of advice for parents. Number 1, homeschool your kids. Do not send them to the public schools. Do not turn them over to somebody else to raise, to brainwash with their values instead of your values. 2, do not allow your child to have a phone with an internet connection. 3, keep your child off the internet as much as possible, except for schoolwork and necessary work. Computers and online activity should be in public view, at the kitchen table, where you can keep tabs on what your child is doing online. And there's no reason for your child to have a social media account. The public schools have become pure poison. They're really churches of Satan. There's just no reason to send your child into that cesspool. Far better for your child to have no schooling than the type of schooling being offered by the government, which really isn't schooling. The government schools are brainwashing camps and babysitting operations. The government schools are not teaching kids the skills that they need to succeed in life, not instilling in them a love of learning, and certainly not teaching them how to be critical thinkers. The schools are teaching the kids to sit and be quiet, not question anything, just fit in with the system. Kids graduate from school not knowing what the American Revolution was, what the Civil War was fought over, or what World War II was all about. The kids have no clue what we're even celebrating on July 4th. But they know all about LGBTQ and trans ideology, and they've learned that America was built on racism and that we're living on stolen land.
What is woke kindergarten? Sounds a little something like this. Before woke kindergarten came to town, Glassbrook had a real problem on its hands. Only 8% of the students were proficient in math. Only 16% could read English. Now, after 2 years of woke kindergarten, the numbers have dropped to all-time lows. to just 4% and 12%. But don't worry, they're learning how to dismantle whiteness. Here's the founder of Woke Kindergarten.
I believe the United States has no right to exist. White supremacy destroys for the sake of destruction. Abolition destroys for the sake of creation. We are not the same. Y'all are the demons. Y'all are the villains. We've been trying to end y'all.
That's Ikea Gross. If you were wondering, she goes by they, them.
And do not send your kid to college unless there's a specific reason to, such as a need for an advanced degree to do what you want to do, such as be an engineer, a lawyer, a doctor, something like that. Professions that require a credential. Only go to college if you need a specific credential to do what you want to do. What you don't want to do is go into massive debt and waste 4 years of life to get a gender studies degree or a theater degree. In fact, with the advance of AI, I think that skilled manual labor jobs are going to be at a premium, such as plumber, auto mechanic, electrician, handyman. It will be a while before robots can do these jobs. These are jobs that need humans to do them for quite a while, I think. Focus more on providing what humans need more than on what humans want. On this theme, check out my book, Win Life: Success Skills Schools Don't Teach. It's available on Amazon in all the formats. This book is mainly aimed at young people in their 20s and 30s, but should be of interest to anyone who wants to be in the top 1% of income earners. Or maybe you just want to lose 20 pounds. This book will help you do that as well. This book will help you achieve most of what you want to achieve in life. Well, that's all I have for you today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share, and hit the notifications button. All this will help trigger the algorithm to push this video out there. Plus, I love reading your comments. Thanks for being here. Hope to see you back here next time.